Can you believe that LEGO Star Wars is old enough to rent a car this year? 25 years old. The LEGO Star Wars theme is now 25 years old this year. And honestly, it's been quite the ride and continues to be. We've had fantastic years, not so great years, and we've seen some awesome sets in the past 25 years. But I thought it would be fun to turn the clock back to 1999 and look at where it all started. These are the origins of LEGO Star Wars. LEGO was a much different company in the 1990s than it was today, following basically the same philosophy they've had for most of the 20th century, building kits that were slowly becoming a little bit more complex, but the themes were all generic: space, pirates, castle, town. Because of this, they were starting to lose some steam. Something that's not that easy to remember is LEGO wasn't doing that well in the late 90s and early 21st century. To try and keep up with other toy brands, LEGO introduced a bunch of new internal in-house IPs. A momentum that started in the 80s and continued all the way into the late 2010s, where LEGO was just throwing their own ideas at the wall and seeing what would stick for their own internal IPs. And some worked out and some didn't. LEGO's part catalog was also much larger in the late 20th century and early 21st century than it was today. It made a lot of the sets at the time really cool, but it wasn't really helping them in a business aspect because it was sinking money into places where they weren't really seeing a large return on investment. They knew something needed to change, and they started looking into licensed themes. The 90s had proven how popular licensed toys were becoming, and the then CEO of the LEGO company at the time knew that this was the direction the company should probably take if they were going to stay afloat in the late 20th century and early 2000s. This idea to spring from the LEGO Group's then CEO happened to coincide with something that was going on at Lucasfilm in the late 90s. George Lucas was gearing up to bring Star Wars back for the prequel trilogy, and for Episode 1, he wanted the marketing initiative for it to be massive, signing on as many toy companies as he could to promote the movie. So many companies, toy and non-toy related, inked multi-billion-dollar contracts to get in on the Episode 1 action. Both Lucasfilm and the LEGO CEO thought this would be a great opportunity, but it was met with a lot of criticism and pushback from the executives at the LEGO Group at the time. They felt it went against the core ideas of the company. They believed this for a multitude of reasons. One, they thought a licensed theme would kind of tarnish the company's reputation, making more in-house products. They believed it to be selling out in a way. That's not to say LEGO didn't have any licensed themes. There were a few things that snuck in the late 90s, but they were more tied into LEGO's town theme, and it felt cohesive and worked out. So this scenario was a little different. They were also not that keen on having a new theme brand with war in the title. They felt it went completely against LEGO's anti-war policy, not having any sets represent anything of modern military. Pushback went on for about 6 months until the then owner of the LEGO company at the time personally stepped in and greenlit the theme. Product development quickly ensued, and the new sets were shown off at New York Toy Fair in February of 1999, and they released the following March. The sales of these new Star Wars sets exceeded LEGO's expectations by 500%. It was slowly becoming the big break the LEGO Group was desperately looking for. They also did not struggle with the same thing other toy brands at the time struggled with when Episode 1 flopped critically. Companies like Hasbro had a really hard time moving product both on their own end and at their retailers' end, while LEGO had no problem moving it because of the nature of the toy. If the kid didn't like something from the Episode 1 set, they could build it and turn it into something else from their own imagination. We got a baker's dozen set in 1999. 13 Star Wars sets. 5 sets that released in March that were based off of the original trilogy, and 8 sets that came out in the following May based on The Phantom Menace. And I gotta say, personally as a fan, I love the 1999 theme. I think it's so timeless and is also a nice time capsule of what LEGO was still at the time when they released these sets and what they were turning into later in the 20th century. You had these new sets that were based off of things from the Star Wars movies, but there was still the core identity of LEGO being there. When you turn the box around on a lot of these sets, you'd see alternative builds and other suggestions that they wanted to encourage you to do. They did this for every theme back then. The whole idea with LEGO back then was that yes, you bought a set of an X-Wing or a fire truck or a police station or a knight's castle, but they wanted you to ultimately take it apart and build your own thing at the end of the day. Of course, the company has massively moved away from this today, but it's really cool to see that it's still within the roots somewhere with a lot of the designers. The designer of the recent Icons Dune set said specifically, "I didn't include a stand with this set because my end goal for this is that the end consumer is going to take this apart and build it into something else." Not to get too sidetracked, returning back to the sets, I do think these are quite special. Of course, compared to today's building standards, the sets are a little simplistic looking and somewhat blocky on some of them. But it's so impressive to see how a lot of these sets really nailed the iconic look of a lot of these ships the first go around. I mean, hell, even this snowspeeder here became the basis of every snowspeeder that came after it. They got a lot right here the first time and used it as the groundwork moving forward. A lot of new molds and printed elements were introduced for the Star Wars theme, a lot of which are still in use today. And one thing I also think is really fun is a lot of these sets use LEGO faces and parts that were available for other themes. You had stylistic faces for characters like Luke Skywalker, but then Biggs Darklighter was just the regular LEGO smiley with a mustache, a minifigure head that they were using on a bunch of other sets back in that era. It's really hard to pick a favorite of all of these. All of these are either really timeless or just solid entries on the list. I think it's a very, very good first whack at the Star Wars theme. Covered a lot of bases for the original trilogy, like having your X-Wing and your Snowspeeder, your Y-Wing and your Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, and then also cool new stuff for the Phantom Menace, like the Gungan sub, the Pod Racers set, the Naboo Starfighter, Darth Maul's Sith Infiltrator, designs we weren't all that familiar with yet. But I don't really think we can talk about any of these sets without having them in hand. So to tease for the next video, I will be opening, building, and talking about one of these sets from this wave. A brand new copy too. Guess which one it is in the comments down below. But I mean, that's all I've got. This is it. The rest is history. 25 years later and LEGO Star Wars is still going strong. Sure, the theme has done some great things and some things a lot of us have disagreed with, but for the most part, as a fan, I look forward to LEGO Star Wars each year, and it's fun to look back at where the theme started off. I hope you enjoyed this little look back at the roots of LEGO Star Wars, maybe learned something new, because like I said, that's all I've got, and I'll see you guys in the next one.